Milwaukee police find a horrifying scene inside an apartment building.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at the most crucial pieces of evidence that led to the arrest of notorious serial killers, bringing their reigns of terror to an end.
I heard a boom.
Ed Gein, sales receipt for antifreeze. On November 16, 1957, Bernice Warden vanished from her hardware store in Plainfield, Wisconsin.
It's been 3 years since the death of Mary Hogan, and Ed's desire to kill again boils to the surface.
Her son Frank searched the store later that day and found the register open and bloodstains on the floor. He also discovered a receipt for antifreeze, the last one his mother had written before she disappeared. Frank recalled that the previous day, a local handyman named Ed Gein had visited the store and mentioned he would return the next morning to buy a gallon of antifreeze.
Bernice's son immediately said, "This is Ed Gein, he did this."
This clue led to Gein's arrest that same day.
What they find will shock the town forever.
When authorities searched Gein's farm, they discovered several corpses he had exhumed from local graveyards. Gein confessed to killing Warden and another woman, though it is believed he had up to 9 victims in total. Harold Shipman, forged will. Harold Shipman was a general practitioner in England with a career spanning over 2 decades. However, suspicions arose when many of his seemingly healthy patients died under his care.
Police in Tameside and Greater Manchester are investigating the deaths of 20 people who are all patients of the same GP.
The investigation into their deaths was complicated as most of these patients were cremated. Shipman's luck ran out in 1998 after the death of 81-year-old Kathleen Grundy. Grundy's daughter knew something was amiss when she discovered a last-minute will that left her mother's £386,000 fortune to Shipman. He was eventually arrested after Grundy's body was exhumed and found to contain traces of morphine.
He was charged last month with murdering one of his patients and forging her will.
Further investigation revealed Shipman owned the exact typewriter used to forge the will. Ultimately, he was convicted of 15 murders, although his total victim count is estimated to be around 250.
Guilty of murdering 15 of his patients, Harold Shipman is sentenced to life.
Dennis Nielsen, clogged drains. Referred to as the Muswell Hill murderer, Dennis Nielsen was responsible for the deaths of at least 12 men and boys between 1978 and 1983.
It was horrific. It made the hair in the back of my neck stand up.
Nielsen lured his victims to his apartment, where he would strangle them and store their remains. As the smell of decomposing bodies grew stronger, Nielsen devised a grim solution. He began flushing the remains down his toilet in small pieces. This eventually clogged the drains in his apartment building. After a neighbor called a plumber to fix the issue, they discovered the shocking contents in the pipes.
Dynarod, the drain cleaning company, come along to clear out some drains in Cranley Gardens.
Nielsen attempted to clear out the drainage, but it was already too late.
I said, "Are we talking about one body or 2? And he just turned around and looked at me and he said, 15 or 16.
The police were called, and they traced the human remains to his apartment, where he was arrested. Andrei Chikillo, his soiled clothes. One of the most infamous killers in Soviet history, Andrei Chikillo terrorized the Rostov Oblast in Soviet Russia, claiming at least 52 lives.
As a schoolteacher, he used his position to prey on and abuse the most vulnerable people in society.
As his rampage went on, police launched an extensive manhunt. On November 6, 1990, Chikillo murdered his final victim, Svetlana Korostik. Shortly after, he encountered undercover officer Igor Rybakov, who noticed that Chikillo's clothes were soiled with mud and leaves, and his cheek was smeared with blood. Despite his suspicious appearance, Rybakov had no reason to arrest Chikillo, so he let him go but filed a report.
He was released because there was no evidence and there were no grounds to hold him any longer.
When Korostik's body was found days later, Chikillo became a prime suspect and was placed under surveillance.
He was spending more and more time hunting for victims. Yet still, those closest to him suspected nothing.
He was finally arrested on November 20th, after which he confessed to 56 murders. Gary Ridgeway, saliva samples from a previous arrest. Many serial killers have confessed to dozens of murders that police couldn't verify.
You're talking about 60, 70, possibly 80 victims.
However, with Gary Ridgeway, they managed to confirm 49 murders, all of which he was convicted for. This makes Ridgeway the second most prolific American serial killer, by confirmed murders. Most of his crimes occurred in the 1980s and 90s, but he was able to evade capture for years, despite multiple arrests.
Back in 1982, DNA was an unknown technology.
After one such arrest in 1987, police collected and stored Ridgeway's hair and saliva samples. These samples wouldn't come in handy until 2001, when investigators linked the saliva swabs to semen found in 3 of his victims.
We had the same male profile from another victim in a separate crime scene.
Ridgeway was then arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 49 life terms without the possibility of parole. Joseph James DAngelo, sexual assault kit DNA. For decades, police held on to DNA evidence from a sexual assault kit, hoping to catch the man who murdered Charlene and Lyman Smith.
They have been searching for more than 4 decades, and tonight the major clue that unlocked this just days ago.
It would later be discovered that this unidentified killer was also responsible for multiple burglaries, sexual assaults, and murders across California between 1974 and 1986. This individual was referred to as the Golden State Killer. In 2017, detectives analyzed the DNA sample using forensic genetic genealogy, which led them to Joseph James DAngelo, a former police officer living in California at the time of the crimes.
Possibly he was committing the crimes during the time he was employed as a peace officer, and obviously we'll be looking into whether it was actually on the job.
DAngelo was arrested in 2018 and ultimately pleaded guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder and kidnapping.
We found the needle in the haystack.
He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. David Berkowitz, parking ticket. Known as the Son of Sam, David Berkowitz terrorized New York City for a year in the late 1970s.
Police discovered in his car the .44 Bulldog revolver and a Thompson submachine gun.
So alarming was his murder spree that thousands of women cut and dyed their hair when they learned he was targeting ladies with long, dark hair. Despite the fear he spread, it was a simple parking ticket that led to his arrest. On August 9, 1977, Berkowitz parked illegally at the scene of his final murder and was issued a ticket. A local resident named Cecilia Davis witnessed this and later encountered Berkowitz holding a dark object.
I didn't know he was a killer. I didn't know he looked nice.
After hearing the gunshots that claimed his final victim, Davis reported the encounter to the police, who traced the ticket to Berkowitz and arrested him.
Well, he said, you got me.
Dennis Rader, floppy disk. Between 1974 and 1991, Dennis Rader, the self-proclaimed BTK killer, murdered at least 10 people in Kansas, mostly women.
A team of detectives dispatches to the home of Nancy Fox.
After the death of his last victim, Rader abruptly stopped killing and went silent. He probably would have gotten away with it, if not for his undying need for attention. In 2004, after years of inactivity, a local Kansas paper suggested that the killer was either dead or in prison.
A letter sent to the Wichita Eagle last week is believed to be from the serial killer.
This spurred Rader to send letters to various media outlets, enclosing trophies from his crimes. In February 2005, Rader sent a floppy disk to a local TV station, unaware it had metadata tied to his church.
The only Dennis we found on there was the president of the Congregation Council was Dennis Rader.
With this, investigators identified Rader and arrested him after matching his daughter's DNA to evidence from a crime scene. Jeffrey Dahmer, body parts. Late on July 22, 1991, 2 police officers in Milwaukee, Wisconsin were flagged down by Tracy Edwards, who was in handcuffs.
Did you run out of the building?
Yes, I did.
Did you summon help?
Yes.
Edwards led the officers back to the apartment of a man named Jeffrey Dahmer, who he claimed had threatened to kill him. Those officers had no idea they had entered the lair of one of America's most notorious serial killers. For 13 years, Dahmer had eluded capture, ending the lives of 17 victims in that period.
I began to see family members come and ask questions about who were these people and did they know of their loved ones, and they would hold pictures up.
He might have been able to convince the cops that it was all a misunderstanding if he didn't have the dismembered remains of his victims scattered around the apartment. Once the officers made the grisly discovery, Dahmer's spree effectively ended.
Jeffrey Dahmer was sentenced to multiple life sentences for the murder of 17 people. He was killed in prison in 1994.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Albert Fish, his own anonymous letter. Known as the Gray Man, Albert Fish was a serial killer with a grim habit of consuming his victims' remains.
Little did anyone know that in the years to come, the Gray Man would haunt New Yorkers' lives and become a living embodiment of every parent's worst nightmare.
His last known victim was Grace Budd, a young girl whose family he tricked into letting him take her to a birthday party in 1928. Tragically, that was the last time they saw her. The case went cold until 1934 when Fish sent Grace's mother an anonymous letter describing the horrifying details of her death.
The letter, sent by elderly Albert Fish, has gone down in history as the most vile confession letter ever written.
Using a logo on the envelope, the police traced the letter to a resident Fish had recently stayed in and set a trap for him there.
During a short stay at Frieda Schneider's boarding house, Fish found a random envelope on which was printed a company letterhead that he attempted to conceal by marking it through.
When Fish returned, they arrested him and he quickly confessed to Grace's murder. He was found guilty and executed by electric chair. Which of these cases terrified you the most? Let us know in the comments below.
And I think we were more shocked than him.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.